Captain Myra stood at the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Dawn. Her eyes were fixed on the viewscreen where Earth hung like a black wound in the middle of space. It was once a place of oceans and forests, but now it was only a shadow of itself. The surface was charred, the blue seas gone, and the air poisoned. It had been 10,000 years since the fall, but the scars were still clear. The crew around her sat in silence, their faces heavy with grief and pride. For them, this was not just a planet. This was the beginning of everything. Humanity had survived in exile. When the invaders came so long ago, they believed they had ended the human story forever. The firestorms they unleashed burned cities until nothing was left but ash. The survivors, only a few thousand, fled into the void in ships built in desperation. They were weak then, but they carried with them a promise. That promise was written into the blood of every descendant: one day they would return. One day they would stand again above their ruined world and take back their honor. That day had come. Myra raised her hand and spoke to her officers. Her voice was calm, but the power in her words filled the room. This is Earth. This is our home. 10,000 years have passed, but we have not forgotten. We did not die. We grew strong. And now we are here to reclaim what was lost. Commander Aaron, her second in command, looked at the viewscreen with eyes that burned with anger. It feels like the planet itself is calling to us. It has waited for us all this time. We will answer. The crew nodded in agreement. Some clenched their fists, others closed their eyes in silent vows. They were not here for glory or riches. They were here because the bones of their ancestors still rested in that ruined soil, and their spirits demanded justice. The fleet stretched behind the Eternal Dawn, hundreds of ships shaped in designs no one else in the galaxy had seen. Human engineering had grown in isolation. With no allies and no trade, they had built weapons and engines from their own minds. Every ship was a monument of survival. Their hulls were black and sharp, built for both speed and destruction. They were called the Ghost Fleet, because for centuries the galaxy believed humanity was gone. Now the ghosts had returned. Myra gave the order, and Aaron sent a landing group to the surface. Small crafts broke away from the fleet and descended through the dead sky. As they approached the ground, cameras showed the ruins of cities. Towers lay broken in the dust. Bridges stretched across rivers that no longer flowed. Roads cut through deserts of ash. What was once green and alive was now silent and dead. Yet even in the silence, there was a strange strength. The ruins had not been erased. They were waiting, like a message carved in stone. When the soldiers stepped onto the ground, the ash rose around their boots. The air was toxic, but their suits kept them alive. They walked among fallen buildings and shattered statues. Some stopped at what had once been a school, its walls cracked but still standing. Others stood before a broken monument of stone carved with human figures reaching toward the sky. Though burned, though broken, the spirit of Earth was still there. One soldier dropped to his knees, pressing his gloved hand against the ground. His voice shook as he spoke over the comms. "We are home." The others followed his lead. They bent down, touched the soil, and whispered their own promises. They swore to honor the dead, to rebuild what had been destroyed, and to punish those who thought humanity could be erased. The ruins were not just ruins. They were proof. Proof that Earth had lived, that it had fought, that it had mattered. And proof that the enemy's victory was not complete. Back on the flagship, Myra watched through the feeds. She felt a storm inside her chest. Anger, sorrow, and pride twisted together until they became something stronger. Humanity had been scattered, broken, and hunted. But they had never given up. They had hidden in the dark, forged their strength, and now stood on the edge of vengeance. Earth is not just our past, Myra said to her crew. It is our future. And we will fight for it. The words echoed across the comms, reaching every ship in the fleet. Soldiers in their stations cheered, engineers raised their tools, and pilots gripped their controls tighter. For the first time in 10,000 years, the people of Earth felt whole again. The fleet drifted silently above the burnt world. The galaxy did not yet know that humanity had returned. But soon, every star would hear their footsteps. The ghosts of Earth were awake, and they were not coming to ask for mercy. They were coming to reclaim fire. The silence of space around Earth was broken only by the steady hum of engines. The fleet hung in orbit, black and sharp against the stars. These were not the fragile ships of the past. They were built from 1,000 years of exile, forged in hidden foundries on forgotten worlds. Each vessel carried the weight of generations who had dreamed of this moment. They were more than machines. They were symbols, each one a monument to human survival. The fleet was called the Ghost Fleet because the galaxy believed humanity was long dead. For centuries, only whispers remained. Some said humans had vanished like smoke. Others believed they had been wiped out completely, their memory scattered like dust. But the truth was different. Humanity had hidden, grown stronger, and learned to fight in the shadows. And now, after 10,000 years, the ghosts had come back to life. Captain Myra stood before a wide display in the command hall of the Eternal Dawn. Around her, the officers of the fleet gathered. Commander Aaron, her loyal second, was at her side. Engineers, pilots, and tacticians waited, their eyes fixed on their captain. Myra raised her voice so that it would carry through every speaker across every ship. "Look at what we have become," she said. "They thought they ended us. They thought Earth's fire was the end of our story. But we turned exile into strength. We turned silence into weapons. And now we return, not as prey, but as hunters. This fleet is not only steel and fire. It is the proof that humanity cannot be erased." The room filled with nods and low murmurs of agreement. Aaron stepped forward, his voice steady but carrying the same fire. "Every ship here has been named after something we lost. The Soul's Flame, the New Horizon, the Ashborn, the Steel Memory. Each name is a reminder. We carry our history into every battle. We will not forget, and we will not stop." One by one, the screens lit up with the faces of other captains. They saluted Myra, their eyes sharp with the same vow. They had trained for this all their lives. Their grandparents had whispered to them about Earth's burning skies. Their parents had raised them on stories of a home they had never seen. And now they were the ones chosen to reclaim it. A scout vessel, the Iron Star, was the first to descend into low orbit. Its cameras showed more ruins, more silence. Craters scarred the land where weapons had struck long ago. But among the ruins, there were traces of what humanity once was. Roads stretched into the horizon. Ruined cities still stood in broken shapes, their skeletons reaching upward as if they had tried to resist until the end. The crew inside the Iron Star walked quietly among the ruins. One soldier stopped at a collapsed tower and brushed away ash to reveal the symbol of an old flag, half burned but still there. He touched it with his gloved hand and whispered, "They could not erase us." The feed was broadcast to the fleet, and the soldiers watching felt their hearts tighten. Earth was gone, but it was also alive in a way that could not be destroyed. The ashes were not weakness. They were a call. a reminder of why they had carried the weight of survival for so long. Back aboard the Eternal Dawn, Myra listened to the reports. She could see the fire growing in her people. They were ready to fight. They were ready to strike back. But she also knew the galaxy was not yet aware. The empire that had burned Earth all those centuries ago had grown lazy, confident in its power. They had forgotten humans. That arrogance would be their downfall. "We are ghosts no longer," Myra declared. "We will reveal ourselves, but only when the time is right. Let the galaxy tremble when it learns the truth." The officers saluted. The message spread from ship to ship, until the entire Ghost fleet burned with one thought. Humanity had not died. Humanity had not vanished. Humanity had returned, stronger than anyone could imagine. In the silent void above Earth, the fleet began to prepare. Weapons were charged, engines tested, battle plans drawn. But beneath the steel and the fire, something even stronger burned. It was not just vengeance. It was pride. It was the memory of a home they had lost, and the promise to rebuild it no matter the cost. As the ships drifted in formation, their black hulls gleaming against the light of distant stars, the sight itself was enough to inspire fear. This was not a fleet built for survival anymore. It was a fleet built for war. And soon, the galaxy would learn what it meant to awaken the ghosts of Earth. The Ghost fleet floated in silence above the ruins of Earth. Every ship held its position, waiting for the command to move deeper into enemy space. For now, they remained hidden, their black hulls blending with the endless night. But no secret lasts forever. The galaxy was about to notice that something had awakened in the shadows. It happened when a patrol ship from the Empire entered the system. The vessel was not large, but it carried enough firepower to sweep away pirates or smugglers. Its crew was relaxed, confident, and unaware of what awaited them. They were not expecting resistance. To them, Earth was nothing more than a burned rock, a graveyard with no life left. On the Eternal Dawn, Captain Myra watched the incoming signal. Commander Aaron stood beside her, his eyes narrow. The enemy ship had not yet noticed them, but its scanners would soon sweep across the system. If they let it escape, the Empire would learn nothing. If they revealed themselves now, the galaxy would hear the truth. "Shall we strike?" Aaron asked. Myra's answer was calm, but every word carried weight. "We do not hide from those who destroyed us. Let the first encounter remind them who we are." The order spread through the fleet. Engines roared to life. Weapons hummed with energy. The Ghost fleet moved out of the shadows. Hundreds of ships glided into view, forming a formation that covered the sky. The Empire patrol ship froze. Its captain, a tall alien with scaled skin and sharp ridges across his face, stared at the sight in disbelief. His crew shouted reports, their voices filled with panic. The screens showed ships marked with banners of Earth, the old flag still painted proudly across their hulls. "This is impossible," the alien captain hissed. "Humans are gone. They burned long ago." But disbelief could not stop what came next. The Eternal Dawn sent a single message across the void, translated into every known galactic tongue. Myra's voice echoed through the patrol ship's comms. "This is Captain Myra of Earth. We are the children of the planet you destroyed. We are not extinct. We are not forgotten. And we have returned." The words froze the alien crew. Then the fleet opened fire. Blue beams cut through space, tearing into the patrol ship's shields. Explosions ripped across its hull. The Empire crew scrambled, shouting orders, firing back with every cannon they had. but their weapons barely scratched the human ships. The Ghost Fleet had been forged for this. Their armor was stronger, their weapons sharper, their resolve unshakable. In minutes, the patrol ship was crippled. Fires burned inside its decks. Escape pods launched, scattering like sparks into the void. Myra gave no order to chase them. She wanted survivors. She wanted the story to spread. On the broken patrol ship, the alien captain limped to the comm station. His face was scorched, his armor cracked, but his voice carried across the galaxy. The humans, they are alive. They are here. The signal ended as his ship collapsed into flames. Back on the Eternal Dawn, the crew erupted in cheers. They had won their first battle, a small one, but it was enough. The galaxy now knew the truth. Humanity had returned, and their enemies would never sleep easy again. Commander Aaron turned to Myra, his face fierce. They will come for us now. That captain's last words will spread across every star system. Good, Myra replied. Let them come. The more they bring, the more they will lose. The Ghost Fleet regrouped, silent once more. But in that silence there was no fear. There was only anticipation. They knew the Empire would respond with force. They knew greater battles were ahead. But the first blood had been spilled, and it belonged to humanity. Myra walked to the viewing deck, standing before the vast black planet below. She pressed her hand against the glass, feeling the weight of her vow. This is for you, Earth. This is only the beginning. The stars around the ruined planet seemed to shine brighter, as if the universe itself recognized the return of its lost children. The ghosts of Earth were no longer whispers. They had spoken with fire, and the galaxy had heard. The first encounter was over. The war to come had just begun. The Ghost Fleet held its position in orbit, but there was no celebration. The patrol ship had been destroyed, and the galaxy now knew that humans were alive. Yet Captain Myra understood that the first encounter was only a spark. The Empire would not ignore it. They would send larger forces, determined to crush the ghosts before they grew too loud. Humanity had to be ready. Inside the command hall of the Eternal Dawn, Myra gathered her officers and soldiers. The wide chamber glowed with pale light, and the walls were lined with banners of Earth. Some were old and faded, carried across centuries by the descendants of survivors. Others were newly made, painted by children born in exile who had never seen the planet alive. All of them spoke of one truth: humanity remembered. Myra stepped forward and pressed a button on the console. The lights dimmed, and a series of recordings appeared on the central screen. Grainy images filled the room, taken from the final days of Earth. Soldiers stood together, weapons in hand, as fire rained from the sky. Cities glowed with smoke, towers falling one after another. Families ran through the streets, carrying children, trying to escape the destruction. The sound of explosions and screams echoed through the speakers. No one in the hall moved. Every soldier had seen these recordings before, passed down from their ancestors, but each time it struck their hearts like a blade. It was not just history. It was memory. It was the wound that had shaped them for 10,000 years. This is who we are, Myra said, her voice steady but filled with fire. They tried to erase us. They thought fire and ash could destroy our spirit. But these images are still here. These voices still cry out to us. Every one of us carries this memory inside. It is why we fight. It is why we return. Commander Aaron's jaw tightened as he watched the recordings. He saw a group of defenders on the screen, humans holding the line against impossible odds. Their weapons were small compared to the Empire's machines, but they did not surrender. They fought knowing they would fall, Aaron said. They stood because they wanted their children to live. We are those children. Around the hall, soldiers lifted their heads. Some wiped their eyes. Others clenched their fists in silence. Each of them carried stories told by their families. Stories of cities that no longer existed, of rivers that had turned to smoke, of skies that had burned red. These stories had never faded. They had become part of who they were. Myra continued, her words striking deep. We did not return for conquest. We did not return for wealth. We returned for them. For the ones who stood on Earth's soil when the fire came. For the ones who believed that someday, their children would rise again. We are the answer to their hope. We are the fire they left behind. She ended the recording. The screen went dark, but the silence in the hall carried more weight than any image. Every soldier stood taller, their eyes sharper. They were not fighting only for themselves. They were fighting for a promise that had lasted 10,000 years. Later, Myra walked alone to the observation deck. The burnt earth turned slowly below. She placed her hand against the glass, her reflection overlapping the dead world. She could almost hear the voices of those who had lived there long ago. The laughter of children, the songs of families, the courage of soldiers. None of it was truly gone. It lived inside her, inside every member of the fleet. Commander Aaron joined her. Do you think we can truly rebuild it? He asked quietly. Yes, Myra said without hesitation. The planet may be scarred, but life can grow again. We will plant forests where there is ash. We will raise cities where ruins stand. Earth will breathe again. But first, the Empire must fall. Aaron nodded, his eyes never leaving the planet. Then we will make them remember what humans are. The Empire believed strength came from power alone, but humanity had something greater. They had memory. They had loss. They had a fire that had burned for 10,000 years without going out. That fire was now alive in the Ghost Fleet, and it would not be stopped. When Myra returned to the command hall, she gave her final words to the fleet. Her voice carried to every ship, to every soldier, to every pilot waiting in silence. We are the memory of fire, she said. We will bring that fire to those who tried to destroy us. And when the galaxy sees our flames, they will know that humanity cannot be erased. The message ended, and the ships of the Ghost Fleet lit their engines. The time for silence was over. The time for vengeance had begun. The Ghost Fleet did not wait long after the memory of fire was shared. Captain Myra knew that symbols and promises meant little without action. To prove humanity had returned, they needed more than words. They needed a victory that the entire galaxy could see. Their target was chosen carefully. Near the edge of the solar system, the Empire had built a stronghold long ago. It was not a major world, but it was a fortress meant to guard the region and remind all nearby systems of the Empire's power. Ships passed through its gates, soldiers trained inside its walls, and resources were stored in vast warehouses. For centuries, the stronghold had been untouched, its leaders arrogant and certain of their safety. Now it would face the fury of humanity. Myra stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn as tactical maps lit the displays. Red icons marked the Empire defenses, heavy cannons, fighter wings, and towering shield generators. Blue icons marked the Ghost Fleet, smaller in number but far more advanced. Commander Aaron explained the plan, his voice calm. We strike fast, before they can call for reinforcements. Our ships will break their shield line, then ground forces will land. Once we control the stronghold, the message will spread. The soldiers nodded, no fear in their eyes. They had trained for this all their lives. Every one of them carried the memory of Earth's fall, and now they would return that pain to the enemy. The order was given. Engines roared as the Ghost Fleet surged forward. The silence of space shattered when the first human cannons fired. Blue light tore across the void, smashing into the stronghold's shields. The Empire's defenders woke in confusion. Alarms screamed, ships scrambled, but it was already too late. The first wave of human warships cut through the outer defenses like blades. Enemy fighters swarmed to meet them, but the Ghost Fleet pilots moved with precision. They had been raised in exile, learning to fight in simulators since childhood, trained for the day when they would strike back. Their ships darted through enemy formations, firing with deadly accuracy. Explosions filled the sky, lighting the battlefield with fire. On the ground below, the stronghold shook under bombardment. Walls cracked, towers collapsed. The Empire soldiers inside shouted orders, but fear spread quickly. They had been told humans were extinct. Now, as they looked up, they saw the banners of Earth painted across enemy ships. The ghosts of history were no longer ghosts. They were real, and they were merciless. Myra's voice carried through every human channel. Remember why we fight. This is for Earth. This is for every ancestor who fell when the fire came. Do not stop until the stronghold is ours. Dropships roared through the atmosphere, carrying ground troops. The first to land was Aaron himself, leading a unit of soldiers in heavy armor. They marched across the ash-covered ground, weapons blazing. Enemy fire struck at them, but they moved forward, shield projectors glowing around them. Human soldiers fought with a fury the Empire had never seen. Every step they took was a step closer to justice. The stronghold's gates fell, blasted apart by charges. Human soldiers stormed inside, pushing through narrow halls, clearing room after room. The Empire soldiers fought hard, but their courage broke when they saw the humans never retreat. Even when wounded, the humans pressed forward. It was as if nothing could stop them. One enemy officer shouted to his troops, "They fight like they have nothing to lose." He was wrong. They fought like they had everything to gain. Hours passed, and the battle reached its peak. The Empire's commander tried to rally his men, but his words were drowned by the sound of explosions. From the skies above, the Eternal Dawn unleashed a final strike, tearing down the stronghold's shield generator. Human banners were raised across the walls, bright against the smoke and rubble. When the last shot was fired, silence fell. The battlefield was broken, fires burning in the distance, but the stronghold was in human hands. Soldiers stood among the ruins, lifting their weapons in victory. Some dropped to their knees, pressing their hands into the soil, whispering promises to Earth that the fight was far from over. Myra's face appeared on every screen in the fleet and across the conquered stronghold. Her voice was steady, strong, unshaken. Today we take back what was stolen. This is only the first stone. The Empire believes it rules the stars, but humanity has returned. And we will not stop. The message spread quickly. Prisoners taken in the battle whispered about it in fear. Traitors carried rumors to distant systems. In dark corners of the galaxy, oppressed people heard the story and felt something they had not felt in centuries: hope. The siege of the stronghold was not just a victory. It was the spark of something greater. The Ghost Fleet had shown that humanity was not only alive but powerful. And as the fires burned behind them, Myra looked at her crew and spoke the truth they all carried in their hearts. This is only the beginning. The fall of the Empire's stronghold shook the galaxy like thunder rolling across a silent plain. For 10,000 years, humans had been spoken of only as ashes, a forgotten race wiped out by fire. Now, stories spread faster than light. Traders whispered about banners of Earth raised on conquered walls. Soldiers who fled the battle spoke of warships unlike anything they had seen. Survivors of the stronghold carried one truth with them: the ghosts of Earth had returned, and they had won. On worlds far from Earth, leaders gathered in secret chambers. Some dismissed the rumors at first, believing them to be lies created by rebels. But when reports came from multiple systems, doubt turned into fear. If the humans are alive, one governor whispered, then the Empire has woken a storm. Even those who had never known Earth could feel the shift. On slave worlds, whispers grew into quiet songs. On conquered planets, broken people looked at the stars and dared to imagine freedom. If humans could survive the fire and return stronger, maybe others could also rise. Hope spread like a hidden flame, small but uncontainable. Inside the Ghost Fleet, Captain Myra stood before her people once again. The victory at the stronghold had given them proof of their strength, but she knew the real war was still ahead. The Empire would not ignore such a strike. They would gather their fleets, send their armies, and try to crush humanity before the fire grew too large. Myra raised her voice so that every soldier and officer could hear. The galaxy is watching. They have seen our flag. They know we are alive. But this is not enough. We must make them understand who we are. We must show them that humanity does not bend, does not break, and does not vanish. Commander Aaron stepped forward. His face carried the hard strength of a soldier who had lived his entire life for this moment. The Empire believes fear will hold their subjects in chains. But now fear belongs to them. Every victory we take will shake their rule. Every battle we win will weaken their grip. The galaxy itself is waiting for us. The fleet prepared for movement. Scouts reported that the Empire was already sending fleets to hunt them. But humanity did not run. Instead, Myra ordered her ships to strike again, this time at a supply hub that fed the Empire's core fleets. The Ghost Fleet moved like a shadow, arriving without warning, cutting through defenses, and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. Each strike echoed across the stars. Messages carried by traders and smugglers told of human warships attacking with precision and fury. People began calling them the Fire Returned or the Children of Ash. To some, they were a nightmare. To others, they were a beacon. On one world, a group of rebels gathered in a cave, listening to the reports through stolen comms. An old man who had lived under the Empire's chains his whole life began to weep. "I thought the humans were gone forever," he said. "But if they are back, then maybe we can stand too." His words spread, and the cave filled with cheers. Across the galaxy, sparks of rebellion began to glow. But the Empire did not sit idle. In their grand halls, alien commanders gathered around maps, their voices filled with anger and disbelief. "How could this be?" one demanded. "We burned their planet to ash. We erased their people. How do they stand before us again?" Another growled in fear. "If humans survived fire, then they cannot be destroyed. We must crush them now, or we will lose the galaxy." Orders were given. The largest fleets were called from distant sectors. The Empire planned to gather its strength and strike with overwhelming force. They wanted to end the Ghost Fleet before it became an unstoppable storm. Back on the Eternal Dawn, Myra listened to the reports of the Empire's movements. She stood in silence for a moment, then spoke to Aaron. They are afraid. That is why they gather everything they have. But they do not understand. Fear does not weaken us. Fear makes us stronger. Aaron nodded, his voice steady. They burned Earth, and we still returned. What can they do now that will frighten us? The crew around them straightened, their faces lit by the glow of their screens. They had already proven themselves in battle, but now they carried something greater than victory. They carried the weight of a galaxy that watched them with hope. Myra sent out one final broadcast, carried across channels that reached far beyond their fleet. Her words echoed in the language of 100 worlds. We are the children of Earth. We remember the fire. We remember the ash. And we will never forgive. To those who are enslaved, to those who are broken, look to us. We are proof that the Empire can bleed. We are proof that the Empire can fall. Her voice carried across the void, and in hidden corners of the galaxy, people listened. For the first time in centuries, they believed that the Empire was not eternal. The ground beneath its throne was beginning to shake. And in the heart of the Ghost Fleet, soldiers prepared for the storm to come. The Empire was gathering its greatest power. Humanity welcomed it. For they had waited 10,000 years, and now their time had come. The Empire's fleet moved like a tidal wave across the stars. Thousands of warships gathered, their formations stretching farther than the eye could see. For centuries, these fleets had crushed rebellions and erased entire civilizations. Now they were pointed at one target, the humans who had returned from Ash. On the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, Captain Myra stood before a great display of the enemy's advance. The sheer size of the armada was enough to make even hardened soldiers fall silent. Yet Myra's voice was steady. This is what we waited for. 10,000 years of silence ends here. We face the Empire not as survivors, but as the fire they could not kill. Commander Aaron placed his hand on the console. His eyes were sharp, filled with determination. They believe numbers will break us. But they do not understand that we are not just one fleet. We carry the memory of Earth, and that memory cannot be destroyed. Around them, the crew prepared. Weapons systems hummed, shields charged, and fighters waited in launch bays. Every soldier knew the cost of what was coming. Some would not return. Yet none stepped back. The vow of humanity was clear, they would face the Empire, no matter the price. When the battle began, it shook the galaxy. The Empire's warships poured fire into the void, their weapons blazing like suns. But the Ghost Fleet did not crumble. They moved with precision, striking at weak points, splitting enemy formations, and vanishing before the Empire could trap them. The fight was not just strength against strength. It was fury against arrogance, memory against forgetfulness. Human ships tore through the enemy ranks, their weapons cutting deep. Fighters darted like sparks, slipping past defenses to strike at engines and command ships. The Empire tried to press their numbers, but each wave they sent was met with fire sharper than steel. On distant worlds, people listened to the reports in disbelief. For the first time in living memory, the Empire's fleets were not crushing an enemy, they were being held back. And more than that, they were losing ground. In the heart of the battle, Myra's ship faced the Empire's flagship, a giant vessel that had led countless campaigns of conquest. Its commander, an alien warlord, spoke across the channels. You cannot win, humans. You are dust pretending to be fire. We will burn you again, and this time nothing will remain. Myra answered with calm defiance. You burned our world once, and still we returned. You cannot burn memory. You cannot burn spirit. And you cannot burn the vow of a people who refuse to die. The two flagships clashed in a storm of fire. Blasts shook the eternal dawn, and alarms filled the bridge. Still, Myra stood firm. Her orders were sharp, her crew unshaken. Slowly, piece by piece, the Empire's flagship began to break. Aaron gave the final command for the strike. A wave of human fighters surged forward, carrying torpedoes that tore through the enemy's core. With a blinding flash, the flagship erupted. The explosion lit the void, and for a moment the battle fell silent. The Empire's fleet wavered. Their greatest ship was gone, their commander destroyed. Fear spread through their ranks. Some tried to fight on, but others broke formation, fleeing into the stars. The Ghost Fleet pressed forward, forcing the Empire to retreat. When the last enemy ship withdrew, the void grew quiet. The Ghost Fleet had endured. The battle that was meant to erase them had instead written their name into history. Myra looked at her crew, their faces marked by exhaustion yet shining with pride. She spoke softly, but her words carried weight. 10,000 years ago, they burned our home. Today, we stood against them and did not fall. We are no longer the lost children of Earth. We are its voice. We are its fire. Her words were recorded and spread across the galaxy. On slave worlds, chains felt lighter. On conquered planets, people raised their eyes to the sky with new courage. The empire that had seemed eternal was now wounded, its power no longer unshakable. In hidden corners, rebellion began to stir. Banners were painted, weapons forged, and voices rose in secret meetings. The fire of Earth had lit 1,000 sparks, and soon those sparks would become flames. Yet Myra knew this was not the end. The empire was vast, and its strength was still great. But she also knew something deeper: humanity had already won more than a battle. They had won back their place in the galaxy. They had shown that even after 10,000 years, even after fire and ash, humanity could not be erased. That night, aboard the Eternal Dawn, the crew stood together in silence, looking out at the stars. Each one of them carried scars, yet each one also carried pride. They had fought not only for themselves, but for every world that dreamed of freedom. And in that silence, Myra made her final vow. As long as stars burn, humanity will rise. We will never kneel again. We will never be erased. And we will never stop until the galaxy is free. The vow carried through her crew, through the fleet, and through the stars themselves. Humanity had returned, not as victims, but as warriors. Not as ashes, but as fire. The Empire had thought Earth was gone forever. Now the galaxy would never forget the truth: humanity endures, humanity rises, and humanity avenges.